we're back. Thanks for staying with us. Planet Green Juice calling numbers 1347 326. We're staying up War. Our good friend David Rudoi Law. He is leaving for Amsterdam.
Thanks, guys. Happy to be here.
His battles as a warrior. Okay, so we got Eric Van Dussen. Now we're going to go next to, straight out of Lansing, Jeff Hank. He's the attorney that's handling the Safer Lansing program, I believe, in the decriminalization effort. I read about all that. Yeah.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Welcome to the show, by the way.
Thank you.
Tell us what's happening in Lansing and what this effort's all about and what we intend to accomplish.
Well, it's real exciting here in the capital city right now. Like many of the other cities in Michigan that have tried to repeal cannabis prohibition, we are putting an initiative on the ballot to amend the Lansing City Charter to allow for the possession, use, or transfer of up to an ounce of cannabis for adults 21 and over on private property. So we hope to have this on this November's ballot. Signature gathering is coming along just great. We're receiving nothing but overwhelming support from the community. Some of the local politicians seem pretty warm to the idea. We haven't received any negative feedback from anyone, and we expect to get this on the ballot, and we expect it to pass.
Fantastic. Let me ask you a couple questions about the specifics. I know you're a lawyer and love having lawyers on the show.
Sure.
Were you part of writing putting the language together?
I was, but to be frank with you, we really kind of copied and wrote on the coattails of the Detroit initiative. As you might be aware, Michael, that was challenged legally, and the challenges to it were unsuccessful. So we pretty much took the same language, although we added the word transfer. And we did that specifically in relation to the McQueen case at the Supreme Court and the Medical Marijuana Act, although this is not an initiative dealing with medical marijuana, it's dealing with cannabis in general. What we want to make clear and what we hope to make clear in our intent with the word transfer is to prevent a situation which you and probably many others have seen who listen to the show where someone is charged with a felony or some sort of crime for simply consensually sharing cannabis with a friend or a family member or someone else. So we believe the word transfer is fairly broad and it'll be interpreted to include a sale or a transfer without remuneration or anything along those lines. And we do that hoping to help facilitate the exchange of cannabis between adults and to make it clear to local authorities that we believe that that's your right as an American and the government should have no role, no interference, no usurpation of those rights, and we want to make that pretty clear. So we try to keep the language simple, but at the same time we hope it to be interpreted fairly broadly to cover a range of activities.
Well, we've had a number of people on the show who participate in these various things. I know Tim Beck's a big advocate of keeping, as we talked about, different ballot initiatives and which are going to be successful, and simplicity is key, and there's certain words that are going to always be buzzwords that give opponents the ability. But one of the things that I found to be interesting that was fought over in the Grand Rapids initiative at different parts, I know it's been all over the board, but there's a point in time where you had the county prosecutor arguing with the city attorney over the resources from these arrests. The requirement of a local police officer and their duty or responsibility, or maybe even violation, even policy violation. I don't even know what the compellingness was, if any, of the on the scene officer to write it a certain way instead of to turn it over to the state prosecutor. And
sure.
Some of that minutia in there of an officer getting in trouble, for example, if a city, a police officer who wrote a complaint instead of a ticket, or and took it to as they have in the past and did up until this time in some instances, and offered it to the warrant prosecutor at the county prosecutor's office. Is there going to be something is that something that's addressed in your the Lansing initiative?
That's a great question, and it's a real serious problem. We don't specifically address that in the initiative. Our hope is that the Lansing Police Department, Lansing being a large part of Ingham County where this is happening and also being partially in Eaton County, that the local police will take this as the voters' intent, that they don't want these kind of crimes, which really aren't crimes at all, to be prosecuted by anyone. Now, obviously, the county officials can still issue charges, still make arrests under state law. The local police can still issue citations and make arrests under state law. What we're hoping is that they're going to respect the wishes of the voters here and see that the time is over. We're tired of prohibition. We're sick of it. We don't want cops harassing people, adults, consensually using cannabis on private property. And we hope that they respect that. We can't force them to do that. I know that was one of the big issues in Grand Rapids. And, of course, there's a monetary incentive to this. Why we took the tack we did, one of the reasons, and why we don't refer to our initiative as decriminalization, like what you see going on at the state level, is we don't believe that someone should pay a fine or be ticketed for possession, use, or transfer while our ordinance doesn't address this. Even cultivation of marijuana, I think most of our supporters are broad-based supporters of freedom and liberty and those types of things. So there's always that problem, that there's an incentive, there's a monetary incentive in prosecuting these offenses for the courts, for the city attorneys, for the county prosecutors, whoever might get a kickback, for lack of a better term, when someone is fined under the state law or forced to pay court costs for those types of things. So we can't stop that at this level, but our hope is that by adding the capital city as one more major Michigan city, and maybe even perhaps the most symbolic city. We joke around with this because, Detroit's obviously the biggest city, but you've also had Grand Rapids, which is considered to be very conservative. So they might take issue with us saying that our initiative is the most symbolic. But what we hope to do is here where all the state legislators are, for them to see a working model of cannabis prohibition repealed and see that the sky doesn't fall, it's not reefer madness in the street, yada, yada, yada. And then hopefully that'll finally be the last domino to fall, and the state legislators say, finally, it's time that we do something. All of our major cities have passed initiatives like this. I think the decriminalization bill at the state is positive. It's a great step forward. I don't think it goes far enough. But what we're hoping to do is we're hoping to move things forward here a little bit and roll back some of the usurpations of our liberty that have happened. And we can't address everything here in the local initiative, but we hope that it has a good effect and that the local police respect that and that they value our freedom more than they do a couple dollars for the police coffers. And I think we've informally received some support, at least voices of support and moral support from the Lansing Police Department. You're not going to find too many officers who will come out on the record and say that, but there's, I think, widespread support amongst a lot of police officers. Not everywhere, not everyone, of course. I mean, I know down in Oakland County and some of these other places, it's still really bad, and it depends on who you're dealing with. And I think that was part of your topic of your show earlier about, or later here about bond and bail conditions and medical marijuana. And as you know, as an attorney, you go in one court, one judge might treat it one way, one might treat it another. But what we think is that if this passes overwhelmingly, and we believe it will, with all the national statistics, the national momentum in the local climate here, that we really hope the police are going to respect that, and we hope that this even has effect on other jurisdictions in the mid-Michigan area, including the county or state police or other police agencies that hopefully will soften up their attitude a little bit.
You listen to Planet Green Trees. The call number is 1-347-326-9626. We're on the phone with Jeff Hank. We're discussing this initiative, and I want to correct myself because I've been referring to it as a decriminalization. I want to be very clear. This is a 1 ounce consenting adult possession, transfer, and use of 1 ounce legal
private property, 21
property,
and over.
21 and over. Not like Grand Rapids, which is the decrim. So there's no issue of fighting over the money. There would be no money. There's no incentive, and they should just let it go. Always a challenge, I see, but the question was really not properly phrased. But I do want to ask you about this. We've had this representative from the MPP, Mason Tavert, who was pivotal in the Colorado legalization. And, they took a different approach in their campaign. In the past, it's been, try marijuana. You should like marijuana. But instead of that, they've gone more in the direction of it's a failed drug war, and it's not nearly as harmful, or it should be treated equally as alcohol. And I heard you talking a little bit about, and that would make sense to a lot of people. I think that was one of the drives in Grand Rapids. I think that was one of the drives, and the decrim kind of represents that a little bit more. But, the legalization effort requires, I think, I'm not suggesting that you're not going to have the people to win. I'm just wondering, do you think Michigan is in a position, I guess we'll go state, county to county, but are we ready to start talking about marijuana as being, publicly accepted as, better for you than alcohol, or at least treated equally?
I think so. I think we are. You can look at the different polls, and you always question how reliable they are. I saw something recently that only 6% of Americans think that people should be locked up for the use of cannabis. And, I know in our world, we deal with some prosecutors and judges who are hardcore, old-school drug warriors who have trouble even accepting the Medical Marijuana Act. But I think most normal people are to the point where a lot of the myths and propaganda of the perceived dangers of marijuana no longer exist. There's just widespread evidence that it's not that bad. It's not dangerous. It's probably safer than alcohol and tobacco, and who knows how many different prescription drugs that people are taking. There's no deaths associated with directly with cannabis use and that kind of thing. So I think we are headed in that direction. Whether we're quite ready to legalize it, I'm not sure, but I think that if a state initiative were put together and it actually got on the ballot, I think it would pass. The problem has been getting it actually on the ballot, and a lot of that I think has to do with the national organizations, if they're ready to support that here in Michigan. And it's my understanding that some of them don't believe that we quite have that support yet. But I would, if I had a crystal ball, I'd venture that in the next few years, some initiative will be put forward, hopefully by the people, and put on the ballot. I'd love to think that our politicians would act prospectively on this and get something done. But there's still a stigma, it seems like, with even local politicians taking a stand on pro-marijuana issues. They're just still, I think, a little bit afraid to do it. Not all of them, but many of them. That then privately you speak to them, and I get this all the time talking to judges, and they say, well, I just wish it was legal. I have prosecutors tell me, I just wish it was legal. Yet they still enforce these laws that most people don't support. So there's a real disconnect, I think, between what people actually want and what they would accept and what we're actually doing right now. And I've always found that very strange. And I think it's only a matter of time before the dam breaks, and we will have legalization here in Michigan. And I think if it is a tax and regulate model, I think that's a lot easier for a lot of people to accept, because the economic argument really entices a lot of people. I mean, I know myself and a lot of the supporters we have here, we didn't make this an economic argument here. This is mainly a freedom argument, and also the fact that, with decreasing police resources, Michigan having, cities with high violent crime, we want our police to focus on real issues. We don't want them hassling, marijuana users and things like that. And that's a pretty widespread sentiment. So I think if you could combine these different reasons in a reasonable proposal to legalize, and whether that included, tax and regulation of some sort, but if you had the economic arguments along with the freedom arguments, and people are really beginning to wake up to all the problems associated with forfeiture and just outright abuse by these drug task force agencies and these courts, denying people a right to a trial by jury, taking their property, guilty till proven innocent. People are really starting to realize how out of control some of this is. And I think that momentum's building up, that we're going to see a brighter day here soon. So I'm an optimist on this, guys. I think that is going to happen. It's just a matter of time, and hopefully that's part of what we're doing here, is that if we can get one more big city on the list, and hopefully, Ferndale and Jackson will pass this year also, the momentum's just going to keep moving forward, where we hope here in Lansing anyway that, I'm actually looking out the window at the Capitol building right now outside of my office, and we really hope these state legislators will take notice and, do something and really, really help the people of the state of Michigan out, particularly you can make that economic argument that in the state of Michigan we could use the jobs, we could use the saving of resources, we could use the farming with hemp or whatever it might be. I mean, there's so many reasons not to, and I think people really realize now that there's more harm caused by drug prohibition in general, particularly cannabis prohibition, than there is by the use of cannabis as it is. I believe, and most people who probably listen to your show tonight, we realize that there's more harm done. The victims, there is no victim when somebody uses marijuana. The victim is the person being prosecuted by the state for using it. So I think people are really starting to wake up to that, and it's only a matter of time before we see real change, and I'm looking forward to that.
There's many things that the medical cannabis community has disagreed about in different directions, but I think everyone is in the consensus of this strategy of the local initiatives. Get them onto the ballot, keep it in the public, force the discussion, and get people to pull the trigger at the ballot box. Winning, it's a message sent to the legislator, and it gets people interested in this topic. And once they vote once, they're going to come out the next time, and it's going to continuously move forward. So I think this is right in line with taking us to the place where we need to be. I know the Lansing will, if and when it happens, will be very symbolic. I think that's a good. There's going to be some disagreements amongst the medical cannabis community. Let it be about which was the most significant city to pass. We can all. That's a much more enjoyable debate.
Sure, absolutely.
So, what can people do to assist in raising awareness or participating?
Well, thanks for asking that. Right now, we really need two things. We need people to collect signatures for us here, registered voters in Lansing. And we also, of course, could use some donations. We're doing fairly well, moving along here. We've got to have everything done by the beginning of August, and we're on track to do that. But it would sure be nice to get the signatures in and get it done early. So if anybody's in the area, we'd love to have your help. If you're interested in supporting us, you can visit our website, Coalition for a Safer Lansing. You can make a donation or read a little bit more about what we're doing. You can certainly call any local Lansing area politicians, particularly Lansing City Council members or the mayor's office. You can call the Ingham County Prosecutor's office and let them know you support what we're doing.
You know what? I'm so happy to know about this, and I want to get behind you guys all the way. And I want to have you come back on the show later on and tell us how you're doing and how the developments are and anything we can do to help, from planting green trees or even the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association.
And also Ryan Baso, who's a prisoner of war who we talked about last week, who just started serving his time, would like people who are interested in helping him out to put their resources toward this particular effort. He doesn't need any help where he is now, but there are people who have offered, and he wants them to put it toward Jeff Hank in this effort.
That's right, and we're doing this for Ryan and the rest of the Lansing 7. They're a real inspiration for why we got to change these laws. I mean, these are good local folks that, again, there's no victim to these crimes. The victims are the people who are now in prison and their families, and what a just terrible injustice and waste of resources. So Ryan and the rest of Lansing 7 are a real inspiration for people involved in the campaign here locally.
Amen to that. All right, Jeff, so thank you very much for coming on the show and sharing that with you. I know a lot of people are going to be inspired and want to stay involved and hear updates, and we'll have to check back with you soon. So thank you, good luck, and thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much, guys. Have a great night.
You too. That, of course, was Jeff Hank, Coalition for a Safer Lansing. And it would be really nice to see that town, backyard of our Attorney General.
He's right. Think about that, the extensive list of cities that will have had some form of decriminalization after this next elections. It's pretty impressive. It's got to start opening a few eyes, state legislature.
I would think so, yeah. We know how influential the municipalities can be in Lansing, so hopefully they'll be, influencing state policy at that level with these new decriminalization initiatives as well.
Let's see, we'll go back to Eric. You're still on the phone, I believe, aren't you? Jump in if you want to. Any thoughts on Jeff Hagan, when is Traverse City area going to go total legalization? You got any answers for that? We also brought Rick back in. Rick, you there?
Yes, I am.
Jump in on your comments and thoughts, and work out Steve Green on hold. We're going to go to the human solution. Shirley, you got 28 minutes left in the show. 3 good songs.
As far as goes, we've had success in every single issue that we've tried in the last few years. There's not been a failed effort in Michigan. So any community that has the wherewithal to get one of these will pass, and it would be successful.
Eric, what are your thoughts? I mean, when are we going to get? Do you think the northern part of the state is ready to get TV commercial where the comparison of marijuana and alcohol as being the equivalent of one another? Are they ready for that in Petoskey and Charlevoix?
I'm not really sure about the climate in those towns, but I know Traverse City, I believe in 2005, passed ordinance to make marijuana enforcement the lowest law enforcement priority. And that's the biggest population center we have in this area.
They also passed favorable dispensary ordinance at one point, and there were billboards and all sorts of things in that area. I think that Traverse City could definitely handle that type of information. They're pretty on top of it.
Yeah, I think even the even the conservative local government officials are pretty reasonable on the issue.
Oh, but it's the Petoskey that's crazy, right? It's been very aggressive.
Yeah, I mean, Jesse handles some cases up there, but I don't really know a lot about the local politics up there on that issue.
I bet like a lot of places, certainly the people are in support. There might be a few who sit in a position of power who'd like to keep it a little restrictive, but...
I mean, I would have to presume that, it runs along the same lines that national polling is running. It's running for full legalization around 50% right now. So I think that's a pretty big gauge throughout the country.
It's weird. Sometimes I ask the question to to Jeff, for example, of course we're ready for the comparison. In my mind, I'm trying to be objective as a radio host and asking the questions. But then I think about a prosecutor who is my adversary, and just how far removed they are from even contemplating that. You know what I mean? It seems, I don't know. That's one of the I guess positives or negatives about seeing the contention that is associated with certain behavior that many believe to be or come to believe is lawful or not arrestable, and then you hear it spoken about, discussed, argued about in court for over and over. Limitations of it, and you know what I'm saying about that? The way in which it's being worked over.
Yeah, I think talking to law enforcement officers around my area, if you sit down with them and have a kind of a heart-to-heart and just a normal conversation with them, and you're asking them why they're going around knocking and doing these knock and talks on known medical marijuana patients that they know are medical marijuana patients, with the primary purpose is to trip them up. When, Benzie County, for such a small population, we've had numerous heroin overdose deaths in the last few years in small Benzie County. We just had one last month, a heroin overdose. They had a big hearing on it today, a prelim. And if law enforcement would focus their resources on, trying to rid the streets of heroin and methamphetamine and not run around trying to, bust everyone with a dime bag and a few pot plants, what would happen to the heroin epidemic that's really in my backyard?
Yeah, exactly. All right, listen, we're on the phone right now, Planet Green Trees. We have Eric Van Dussen, who's been very gracious with his time. I'm hoping he's going to stick out a little bit longer because I know we want to get back to this other topic with our next guest, which is from the Human Solution, Steve Green. And, of course, Steve Green, welcome to the show, Planet Green Trees. You're on with myself and Eric. Rick Thompson.
Hello.
And we've got Jamie, Chad, and Welcome.
Thanks, guys. How are you doing tonight?
Good. I know you had a unfortunate experience this past week in arguing about the ability to use your medical cannabis while on bond. I've had that same fight before with His Honor Judge Bowman. Before we go specifically to you, Steve, Eric, explain again. I know David was here earlier and he talked about the entire bench in the 30th District Court, the Circuit Court in the Lansing area was taking a position nobody could use medical cannabis. So, this theory exists out there. Eric, what's Jesse's reflections on experience on how often persons on bond for marijuana cases are allowed to use their medical cannabis? Eric?
I think in our area, it's pretty much a rule of thumb that you are going to be denied the right to use medical marijuana while on probation. Jesse fights it. I'm on bond. Excuse me. Jesse fights it constantly, as a bond condition, and he continuously questions these judges on what authority they're acting as basically a doctor to this person. What's completely ludicrous is, these people that are on bond will come into court and have other prescription for opiates like Oxycontin or Vicodin or these types of prescription narcotics and opiates, and the judges don't restrict their use of those opiates but want to restrict their medical marijuana use when they have a patient card. And it's completely insane, But
now,
it's like arguing. It has been like arguing to a brick wall in most of these courts.
Well, I agree 100%. It's ridiculous. We can talk about without supporting any of these positions of some of the thoughts that may go through judges' minds. One is that you've got an institution that doesn't want to move and it's set in its ways and it's not ready to change at all. Some of them is just that they're never going to believe in it and whatnot. The other thing which I think is kind of interesting is that some of the judges, and it varies from location to location, are going to be, open to it and some aren't. But here's what I want to say. I think that the problem that a patient seeming to get, wanting to get permission from the court to use cannabis and I'm going to exclude what I know about Steve Green's case, so I'm not speaking directly to this. But I'm saying that I think there's this prevailing view amongst many of the judges that anybody can get a card. So the question becomes, if that's true, you need more from the doctor, right? And this has been the issue, when a patient really needs the support of the physician to either come to court or provide a letter easily where they can articulate something that's going to have some kind of substantive effect, that the physicians are maybe more readily available, prepared to do that, instead of fighting sometimes coming to the courts as they have. And I have a couple in mind that I think have just been terrible for the medical cannabis community. But I just think, they expect more. And I do not agree with this interpretation. Understand that. They expect more, hold doctors to a higher standard, scrutinize their behavior, not for any other reason other than it's marijuana. No other more punishing, more lethal drug is ever scrutinized when prescribed. The doctor's not looked at it anyway. It's not involved in any criminal participation of whether someone can have a defense or not. It's insane. But it is here. And the scrutiny, which I find to be just completely adverse to common sense principles of public health, is to allow the government to scrutinize doctor-patient relationships. And we're seeing that over and over again. And that is the propaganda that exists, I think, in these institutions within the court, the institutions within the probation department. It's they're even predetermined. They know what to say. They've already been read in the book. It's the same stuff we were talking about, that these local municipality government, what are you talking about, the
Michigan Municipal League.
Right. They're just an agency for propaganda on this issue and how to deal with it and how to challenge how to. But the point is that point is that the judges should not be acting as now. Steve Green, I know. Let's hear about your experience. Let me just backdrop it a little bit, if I may. You're on bond, and there's been a condition of some kind not allowing you to use cannabis while on bond, and you and despite that, I think they alleged that you tested positive for cannabis or something, right? And you're brought for a hearing of some kind, either a violation of probation or.
Yeah, I'll clear it up real quick. I was on bond from January. My bond conditions from January never changed until Tuesday. My bond conditions originally and up until Tuesday did not include marijuana. My arraigning judge told me to take my marijuana card to the testing facility and to not think that that was crazy, but that they would exempt it when there. So that's what I had been doing and how I had been living up until this court date. And then the unique thing was at this court date, I came prepared with 9.5 inches of medical records, a doctor, some affidavits, some witnesses, and not only was my attorney barely allowed to talk, but we weren't allowed to present anything. We weren't allowed to have a doctor speak.
What was it set for? It was on a Tuesday in Oakland County, so it wasn't a motion. What was it? Was it a violation of probation hearing?
It was a review of bond.
Okay.
Hearing.
A motion brought by the prosecutor or by the court?
A motion brought by the judge.
Well, there would have been a motion, then the judge just.
Just a hearing brought by the court. What
would happen is this: anyone that's on bond to that judge, when they get to circuit court, he, as a matter of every single time, will take the person's ability to use cannabis. I had a case there with a client who was, by the grace of God, the probation case that was pending while the other case was going on in Oakland County, the judge retired. It was going on so long, and unfortunately he got transferred over to Judge Bowman. And none of the other judges had changed the condition of his bond. Once we got to Judge Bowman, the first time after him continuously using it for almost 2 years, on a motion by the prosecutor, orally, because that judge is very specific about his formal procedures being followed, and usually will never allow a defense attorney to raise a bond motion orally, require them to, file it and press it up for Wednesday or whatnot. But nonetheless, you're saying he made this ruling, wouldn't let anybody talk. Go on, Steve. What happened?
Yeah, so he just, raised his hand to kind of tell the attorney stop talking and said, "Do you understand? No marijuana," with, a grin from ear to ear. No pill marijuana, no marijuana of any kind. And then so from there we...
Is Marinol an option?
The way I clearly understood that, no marijuana, no THC. He inferred actually said THC at all. No pill, no marijuana. So as far as I understand Marinol to be a derivative of THC, that it would mean none of that either. But the problem is my condition is mostly helped by CBD. And so a product or a pharmaceutical, something similar to like Sativex would be a product that might help me substantially. Unfortunately, nothing like that is approved by the FDA in the United States. So there is no pharmaceutical drug comparable to what I take.
Just for discussion purposes, in knowing the environment by which you're in and all the choices that you would have to, I think if your physician prescribed you Marinol and was prepared to come to court to defend upon that as being the prescription that's going to work for you, I think that's your best line to go, because it's no longer about marijuana. It's not a Schedule 1 at that point. It's a Schedule 3. And there's a distinction, not against federal law. All the reasons by which he may logistically get there may not fit, and gives you some basis to work off of. It's a much less ambiguous position to be in. It's much more.
Agreed.
I'm just saying. So if there was a strategy, I know that it's very expensive. I've had other clients of mine get approval for that, and
it's 100% certain that it will put THC into your system.
Yeah.
One of the problems too is, as you know, Oakland County is not real keen on doctors. They seem to have a thing with threatening them. So I'm extremely ecstatic that a doctor would be willing to come to court and testify to the extent that my doctor is. I would not be willing to ask him to do anything additional to endanger himself. I've had three doctors in the state of Michigan that have approved me, and two of them absolutely refuse to come, and both of those are still operating in clinics today, signing people's cards.
Right.
Dr. Frederick Lorenz and Dr. Theodore Densley.
What did Lorenz say?
He refuses to come, and if he's forced, he won't say anything.
He's been in there a lot. Is he still doing certifications, do we know?
Yeah, as far as I know, he was doing certification still up at a Healthy Choice Clinic. And I know there was some issue there and whatnot, but as far as I know, he's still doing certifications for people.
Well, I want Eric to chime in, or at least listen to me rant a little bit about this. And I guess, Steve, you might even feel strongly in my favor about this thing that I'm about to say, or that I talk about a lot, that the quality or the availability to really truly rely upon some of these certifying doctors is a fallacy. That despite the fact that you have paid them the fee, you've gone through the process, and you may even be, as you are, and can show an individual who is would meet the criteria, and 10 out of 10 doctors, whether they would sign a certification or not, would still agree that you are a patient, or that law was written for somebody like yourself. The problem is that the attack is on this bona fide relationship issue, which is silly, but you can see now, being in this situation, that it shouldn't be like this. It shouldn't be so available to knock out this part when a patient really has some of these conditions. I mean, that was one of the issues in the Bob Redden case. I mean, Bob had Tori had cancer and was taking radiation. I mean, if you asked the oncologist, what about the radiation made her qualify? You ever heard of nausea? I mean, isn't that was that the first principle? So nobody would, yet the battle over bona fide and the effort to not let them speak and threaten them with crimes was, obviously. But again, I want to talk about a ruling that came down today. But before I get to that, or yesterday, regarding doctors and whatnot, Steve, do you feel me on this, that the patients have been exceedingly undermined by the physicians' unwillingness to participate?
Absolutely. I don't know. I guess I point two fingers because one of them's got to go directly at the licensing board, which is Lara. Lara has developed this. They got this program. They got their hand in both pots, and they're allowing doctors to commit malpractice. And I'm going here with my life on the line to court, and a doctor that has seen me 15 times and admitted me to a hospital tells me he's not going to come to court. You have ethics, and your ethics, when my head is on the chopping board, you cause no harm. That means you come to court and you tell the truth.
People are probably asking, why isn't he there? Because your lawyer can subpoena him, of course, but I understand the threat To which
every time he's subpoenaed, he goes into the hospital as a patient and says he's having heart conditions.
It should give you some availability. I mean, if he was unavailable, you may be able to. All right. So, but here's the point, Steve. The point is that patients need to be certified by a physician. They need to have the peace of mind that the procedure, as they're going to engage with the certified physician and pay the fee, is going to meet at the minimum the threshold of what the courts are looking for. I mean,
yeah, they need a lawyer like you to create a contract to bind the doctor beyond what the state is requiring, to bind that doctor to you. Maybe at that point sign the affidavit that says, all of the things that need to be said. But yeah, a vast majority of them I see just weaseling out and trying to get out of it in every way.
You're right. That is something that we need. And I think if there's one thing that I've been talking about this. I'm seeking doctors in this program. I know there's a number of other lawyers who have been involved and wanted to participate in helping, and a couple other physicians as well. The idea being that we can say to a patient, because it's not going to be much longer, and the limited ways in which the opposition to getting to a jury, limitations to which cases are going to be dismissed is only in the one remaining, kink in the armor of the Section 8 defense, which is prong one, and the bona fide doctor-patient relationship. And I even think I would suggest, as I do every week, now with the amended laws, 2 years every certification. Is this a trap? I mean, most of the patients become accustomed to getting certified and coming back in 1 year, and I'm not suggesting that should be something that does not suffice. But now you got 2 years, and oftentimes with no other interactions, that is being criticized. That is being a reason to find that there's no bona fide relationship. I disagree with all this in every possible way, but if I'm trying to prevent medical marijuana from being successful, we have to be honest with the community. The community's got to be honest with itself that the weakness is right here in prong one, that doctors are not prepared to come in and say what is needed to simply make the case. And it's not a lot of effort in order for them to do that. I think it can be done with a commitment by both the community to take responsibility for their medical charts and their interactions with the certifying physician to make sure that they're maintaining contact, which would include successive office visits throughout the 2 years, phone calls to the office, and even documents which would outline their, the effect of cannabis on their medical condition. A doctor's chart should be a plethora of interactions with the patient, so that any given time in this timeline after the certification, they can attest to, if called to testify, that the cannabis is either working for them or not working for them. The idea that a certification, is going to last for a year or now 2 years, and if a challenge in court is going to fly, do not believe that. I mean, this is medical marijuana. When you want to prove in court damages from injuries that have occurred, slip and fall or an automobile accident, you don't just take the stand and say I'm in a lot of pain. In order to get paid, you got to prove your damages. In medical marijuana, the only analogy is you got to prove your existence of a debilitating condition, and this is established by interactions with the doctor, complaining about the pain, and also keeping in touch with them on how the cannabis is working or not. Now, it's unfortunate it shouldn't even go in this direction. But Steve, do you agree, or what you've seen, not necessarily so much in your case because no one got to talk, you just saw a shutdown, but you see where it's happening in other courts, don't you?
Oh yeah.
I mean, have you seen doctors? Have you seen doctors, clam up and if not take the fifth, just be completely, neglectful in the certification process?
Well, yeah, we've seen, quite a few that don't want to come or make excuses to not come, or, dodge in other ways, like have a receptionist sign something and then, that wasn't the right signature, so they dodge it that way. Or we've seen them, come to court or call the patient and tell them, if you want me to come, it's going to cost you this much money. Again, that should be against the ethics. But yeah, I don't know, short of like what you're suggesting, that's the best way to probably protect patients.
One of the things that I've offered as a service is to help. They shouldn't be that alarmed. The thing is that their concern is they're going to be answering questions from a position of the unknowing. They don't need to be that. They all should be comfortable.
Just understand what they're doing better, and
right.
They should understand Section 8 better and what's going to be called upon, what the patient or caregiver is going to be called upon to present if they're put into the positions that they're being put into.
There should be no fewer certifications in the state of Michigan. I'm not suggesting that.
No.
The threshold shouldn't be higher. But I'm suggesting the effort of the patient to maintain the relationship needs to be greater in order to really knock this one little kink out. I think that conceptually, Steve, even though I'm not suggesting that, and Eric, I don't know, I want to hear your thoughts on this and what experiences Jesse may have had with other doctors, but I think it's unfair to expect of the physicians for $50 to do anything other than take your $50. And have you expect nothing else?
Paper.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like,
well, yeah, I think it's hard to do that, and it all depends too. Like you said, it's ultimately the patient's responsibility to keep their records, and we all, I would like to think, try to go to your regular doctor or try to go to a familiar doctor you've been to. Unfortunately, a lot of those doctors, don't want to do it or won't do it or can't do it because of affiliations with hospitals or insurance companies. Again, in my case, it was my primary care doctor, for years. So it wasn't that particular question in mind, but I do see that happening where, people move or they have to get recertified or they get certified from some area where there's no regular primary doctors in the town that do it. They have to go somewhere else. And yeah, if they pay $75, $50, $75, I don't know how much you expect for that.
But one second. We only have like a minute left on the show. We're going to go over a little bit because I want to finish this off. It's a great conversation. I want to let Eric respond and Jamie and Chad, and then we'll sign off. But those that are listening now, the post time, 60 seconds, we're going to be off the air. If you're listening on the phone call, you can stay on. But all this will be recorded in the archive. All right, so 60 seconds left. Jamie, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Is Keel valueless now, or is there still an opportunity for that to be helpful in the right situation?
Many of the judges, what has to happen is it's got to be tested. You got to argue Keel. You're going to have to say, some judge says no, you have to go to the Court of Appeals and try to get that definitively ruled upon. It depends on what context it's in. And, I just think that most of the certifications, I think, would pass. It's just that if, just some of the doctors don't want to cooperate. That's the problem. The doctors should want to cooperate. They shouldn't be afraid. My point was that I think that conceptually, Steve, Eric, and I want to hear from you, I think that it's been unfair of the idea that, whatever the businesses are that are bringing in patients that, that $50 is going to carry the day. And I'm not saying that that's not a lot of money. I'm just saying that healthcare is expensive. Doctors' time is worth something. If you're going to be relying upon them for your medical marijuana defense to prevent, problems in that, I think that that's going to be one of the places that you're going to be spending your resources and thinking about it more. You know what I mean, Steve? I'm not promoting for doctors because many of them I've had conflict with, and the last thing I'm looking for is to have them make more money off the community and not do a good job coming to court to defend them. But if I did find the right doctor who was doing it right, I would want them to be empowered. I want them to feel comfortable in doing it the way they're doing it and being willing to come to court regularly to defend them, and they should be compensated in the context of everything that they're doing. Is that something you think that people could get behind?
Well, I do. I do. I think that, patients, I agree with you, Michael, they need to take a more proactive approach towards defending themselves proactively before they even have to. Jesse tells people all the time that, a little more effort on your part, and this is to clients that are coming to him, a little more effort on your part, even though, yes, it's ridiculous that you have to jump through all these hoops, extra hoops that aren't even necessary if you read the law in the plain language of the law. But if you jump through those extra hoops and, have follow-up with your doctor, and, even though you wouldn't have to do the same thing to get a Vicodin prescription or OxyContin if you needed it, from the devil weed, marijuana, you have to jump through those extra hoops if you want to not have criminal liability if you have yourself for some reason caught up in a predicament like that. And the cost for you to do that over a year by having an extra visit, 6-month visit every 6 months, visit your doctor and pay them $50, $100 to have a checkup and discuss with them how medical marijuana is assisting you in your condition, I think it pales in comparison to the costs of a prosecution, not just the financial toll, but the emotional toll and everything else that goes along with a criminal prosecution. So I think patients have to be a lot more proactive, like Michael's suggesting.
But the problem is I don't know that many of the doctors and the programs that exist right now, I see programs like talking about the way the office is set up is not equipped to facilitate a follow-up visit or even a follow-up form that a patient may fill out, and like a pain log or whatnot, or a symptom log, But so I don't know. I think that there seemed to be a wider growth of physicians who are participating, and down here, the doctors are being threatened and tried to be scared away, and sure that the gatekeeper, the gate's locked and the gatekeeper can't open it because the gatekeeper's been silenced or thrown in jail. The program's gonna. So, it's a great play from the villain standpoint, right? I mean, if you're gonna, be the villain, that's what you do. You cut off the head of the. So that's what they're obviously trying to do. But the point is that this is not that difficult because in the end, the medicine will win. It's just a question of getting. I feel like the community is being let down because the doctors that are participating are not leading with a principled standard of care that is not medical standard of care, but at least meets the threshold of the legal, scrutiny to which it's going to be held. And I think that if I was to start it over again or even start from this point forward, I'd start from there, and tell the doctors this is how it's going to be, this is what you're going to do, and this is how you're going to examine the patients and take care of it. And at the end of the day, this is what your chart's going to look like, and you're going to come to court and you're going to defend the patient. Your standard of certification is going to be, am I prepared to come to court to defend this patient? If you say yes, then certify him and give them a treatment plan of how they're going to come back and when you're going to see them. And let's end this nightmare of patients getting screwed because of really bad doctors who are not looking out or understanding the significance of what they're doing and how individuals are relying upon them. Or said another way, your ability to defend yourself in court is going to be precluded because of them. This is inherently unfair. Do you see what I'm saying? They take the doctor out. You can't make prong one. I mean, you can get creative. There's other ways, and it can be done, but it's exceedingly more challenged, And it's asking itself for denial and a road to the Court of Appeals. All right, I'll let you guys have the final word. We'll start with you, Steve Green. First of all, give us some announcements of some upcoming cases, if you would. And let's wrap it up, but I want to hear your thoughts on that, too.
All right. This last week we had Mr. Overholt of Mid-Michigan Caregivers out in Grand Rapids. He finished up at district court, got bound over to circuit court, has a strong case, and believes he's going to win, is prepared to go to trial. Mr. McMillan, he waived preliminary and is going to have a Section 4 hearing on July 3rd.
Who's that? Is that a co-defendant in that case?
It is. That person might have talked to you, I think.
I don't think so. But anyways, go ahead. Keep going.
Berrien County. And then I have court again this Wednesday in Oakland County. And
what's the nature of that hearing? It sounds like a motion of some kind.
Yeah, that's going to be basically to ask the judge to hear what he didn't hear today, or what he didn't hear Tuesday. So again, we're going to come with everybody and be prepared and see what we're allowed to say and do.
So you this one is another issue regarding the bond, you're saying, right?
No, I shouldn't have any issues on my bond.
No. What I'm saying is the issues before the court on this day, next Wednesday,
will be bond.
About bond, okay. All right. Well,
there's also going to be, other motions, but this was an immediate emergency motion, and so the other ones do take, as you know, a couple of weeks to get processed.
I wish you well. Judge Bowman is he's a very tough judge. I'm trying to be judicious when I say that. He's a tough judge, and I know that he's not a proponent of medical cannabis, but I'll leave it at that. Not jeopardize anything. But Steve, thank you for coming on the show and sharing as you always do, and I wish you well. And you can't beat science, you can't beat medicine, and I think at the end of the day, I'll be really turn out the right way for you. Thanks for calling. We'll see you and talk to you next week.
Thank you much. Sure.
All right. We're way over the time frame here, but Eric Van Dussen, again, thank you for sticking with us, sharing all, being generous with your time. What are your final thoughts on the doctor? I mean, has Jesse had, problem? You got a lot of doctors, Harwell cases. It's always a problem. And
well, I think we've had doctors, a fair share of doctors evading subpoenas. Doctors demanding money, outrageous amounts of money to take some time off to come to court.
Are they physicians primarily from a practice that's a general practice or family practice, and one of their patients?
No, mostly they're from different clinics, and a lot of the times, at least in the past, it wasn't in-person visits. So it was a lot of the Skype stuff. Some of the doctors in California and judges and prosecutors and cops hate it when they hear that.
What? Skype?
Even though telemedicine has been emerging for the last 10 years, and there's all kinds of specialists in Texas that give recommendations to patients sitting in doctors' offices in Michigan for other treatments. But if it's marijuana, it's that devil weed again, so it has to be treated with some different type of criteria. So we just have to realize that that's the state of affairs, and that's how people need to proceed, especially patients, because they're the ones liable, and they're going to go to jail, not these doctors. These doctors, their hardship is they have to go to court and they don't make their $10,000 a day that they did sitting there writing however many medical marijuana certifications in a day. Which is, some of these doctors did operate that way, and that had to stop. And I think some of these doctors that have been called into court and had their credentials questions, I don't think it was. I'm not saying it was meritless to have some questions about their ethical treatment of their patients and recommendations of marijuana. A lot of the prosecutors, like in Oakland County, were way overboard, but some of these doctors did have questionable practices, and they needed to be weeded out. Some of them went to prison.
Right. I was going to say something. I did hear from some brethren of the bar today in Oakland County, Judge Phyllis McMillan in the case where a doctor had been forced into taking the Fifth Amendment in the language of the order of the ruling. And this I meant to tell Steve Green about this. The discussion was that the prosecutor can't ask irrelevant questions of the doctor witness and then and then have that doctor take the fifth and then preclude them from continuing to testify on other relevant issues. Kind of chastising the prosecutor's office that's tried to create issues where by testifying a witness becomes a defendant. You know, the classic threat of... So McMillan was the one that did given that opinion. Still waiting to see the hard copy of it. I know that Attorney Jim Emberg was involved in it, and David Rudoi was talking about it. But
I don't think. I think they still have an outstanding issue in that case regarding the reasonable amount necessary. That I think they're having additional oral arguments, maybe just on that issue. I'm not certain though.
Right, but this was a little bit of a kickback, one might say, in terms of Oakland County's position in that regard. But you know, it's. I would like to believe that the physician that comes to court willing is so much more likely to receive the support of the patient community. Wouldn't you think, like, the quality appearance, the preparation to play that role? I mean, the uphill battle that we're engaging in is that physicians do not like to come to court. And that's something you got to get over. But if you can, you know, I don't think it's that difficult to prepare them. They are, you know, they're physicians, and most of them are talking to really not that medically educated prosecutors, not like they're defense attorneys in malpractice cases where they know medicine, and their job is to know the medicine as good as the doctors. It's not like that. It's so much, you know, and the issues of what is medicine is always going to be championed by the doctor, you know, and all they have to do. So I don't know, I just don't think it's that hard. I think that it's just been gone about wrong. You know, you've got a lot of miseducation, misinformation. And I got so much to offer. Please, get me some doctors. Let's get a gold standard together. Eric, seriously, I know there's a couple that have come to mind, but talk to Jesse. Let's see if we can kind of, you know, make this thing happen. I just think for the sake of the community, it's, you know, it's something significant that people could just feel a little bit better. You know, they don't realize. I keep hearing people say, "I got my card, I'm legal," but you know, what's behind the green door is, you know, may not be your what you think you have, or something like that. All right. Any final thoughts, Eric?
Final thoughts is, you know, don't be ignorant of the law, especially the ones that affect you on a daily basis. Don't drive around smelling like marijuana. Just the basics. Know your rights. Know what the Medical Marijuana Act says. Know what amendments just passed and how they affect you. And become knowledgeable. That's the only way to protect yourself from these drug squads throughout the state that have nothing better to do, obviously, than raid medical marijuana patients.
Very well said. Knowledge is power, we like to say. And bringing us tons of knowledge and information, our very good friend Eric Van Dussen. Eric, thanks for joining us tonight. Really appreciate the time you gave to us. We got to get you back on soon. Keep us up.
No problem.
Give our best to our good friend Jesse.
Have a good night.
Take care, Eric. All right, Rick Thompson, any thoughts, final thoughts, if you're still there?
Yep, I sure am, and I do have some final thoughts. Listen, I know we didn't get to the news this evening, but we had 4 stories from other states about different legislatures either trying to knock out mandatory minimums for penalties, removing drug penalties, initiating decrim bills, or even full legalization talks in some legislatures. That means that the nation itself is moving towards a more cannabis-friendly position, but that also means that the things we talked about tonight are even more weighty than we normally would associate them with. The examples that are being set in Michigan can be utilized by other states as a guidepost, either follow through for behavior or to avoid behavior. And the ramifications of what's happening to Michigan patients is going to be felt for years to come beyond the borders of the Great Lakes state. So just as a reminder that everything that happens here doesn't happen in isolation. We are part of a much larger picture. And that national money that we talked about for some of the statewide campaigns that are possible, that'll come only if we get polling done. And if we get polling done that shows respectable numbers, polling is expensive. And if we're to do that, we do have to have some kind of a statewide coalition. Efforts like the Safer Lansing movement and, of course, all of those successful efforts in 2012 those are the right steps towards developing the statewide network that we need to make things like regular polling data and greater media exposure possible. So congratulations to all the organizations that continue to fight for us, the MMA, the Michigan ASA, National Patients' Rights Association, Michigan Moms United, all of the different organizations, the Human Solution, because every one of them plays an important role.
Very well said, Rick, and I'm sorry. Thanks for bringing that to the other states, and I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to get to the news. It seemed like, I can't believe we're 2 hours over. We're like already 20 minutes over.
It was very engaging. Didn't miss it one bit. All of the conversation, especially the look back at the 2009-2010 Michigan and comparing it to where it is right now, that's very important. The one thing I would have liked to hear a little bit more of was some of those court cases that Steve started to talk about, because I know some of those have ramifications statewide too, especially the one you mentioned at the end there that Mr. Rudoi was referring to.
This last one here, the doctor issue with in Oakland County, that one?
Absolutely, that's fascinating. I mean, Mr. Overholt in Grand Rapids, that's going to be a big case in the state too, but this other one is very interesting. So hopefully we'll spend a little bit of time on that one. And then
we will. I was doing it just as a little bit of a teaser. I think we're going to start getting into some other things. Like the next thing I got on my list are the early cases and some of that period of time about some of the things that were going on. And we'll get more into it now that the law kind of maneuver. But that's saving it for the next episode.
There's a lot more opportunity to talk about me, too.
Jamie, we're going to do the Jamie segment.
Very, very good. Looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks a lot, Rick. All right, so you guys, any final comments? And we're going to...
Just John Targowski, if everything goes well, should be able to call in next week. It'd be nice to hear from him personally and check in on.
Excellent.